Okay, we're recording. Hi,
Oh,
Zane.
hi.
Yeah, so I wanted to interview some partners, and you're the first one. Because, like I said, as my husband was pointing out to me, if anybody is hesitant about home birth, sometimes it can be the papas, the
Sure,
partners.
sure.
And I have a couple in my practice right now that are a little hesitant
Okay.
about it. And so I
Yeah,
thought this would be fun to interview a couple partners who have been through a birth with me and just to like hear about experiences and
sure.
if there were things that were hard for you. Like usually the main three things that I hear from partners is about safety, finances, and mess. Um, and so I just wanted to touch base on a couple things with you, like how gung-ho were you from the beginning of even considering home birth, even if like before me? And was safety a question for you? And did you just trust it inherently, or did you do research to come to trusting it? And just touch on that.
Okay. Yeah, so we had two home births. Second one was with Sophia, and the first one was in a birthing center. And leading up to that, I was in a little bit different mindset. He's a 3-year-old now, so he's been with us for a while, obviously. So the birth was a while ago, but leading up to it, I remember being very hesitant because we have we're so programmed with Western medical thought of you need to put your health and safety in the hands of someone else. If you don't, you're going to get something horrible is going to happen. All of that programming. So the more I learned about it though, and the more I was sort of just opening my heart to the process and saying, this is what my wife wants. She feels most confident going into it this way. I want her to feel the most confident she can feel going into it, because that's going to lead to the best experience, obviously. And she feels much more confident about this option than the hospital. That was my baseline for comfort, was her mindset going into it, because she was so comfortable with it. And, that put me in a good place going through it. That isn't to say that she didn't have hesitancy as well, because again, it's a new experience, and we weren't privy to a lot of stories from others who had been through it. We weren't friends with a lot of people who had been through it, so we couldn't have that sort of deeper understanding of the experience of it from anyone else that we trusted. So we just put our hands, or really our experience, in the hands of the birthing center, which was Thrive Birthing Center in Santa Rosa. They're awesome. And I think that, it came down to education and getting to a place where it was easy for me to kind of give the control over. Now, with the second birth with Sophia, it was much different because we had done it before, obviously. And, we were excited actually to do it again this time with someone as wonderful as Sophia, because she made the process leading up to it very easy with a lot of education. So thank you for that, Sophia. But your experience really shined through too, when, helping us overcome our fears, which, the first birth didn't go to plan necessarily. So, it wasn't bad. My wife and my son are here, in an amazing way. It really taught us a lot about expectation and about really handing over control. So this time around with Sophia, it was really nice to be able to hand over more control and be like, we know you got it. We've seen the process somewhat. We didn't do it at home the first time, but to do it at home the second time actually was more comforting for me. It was an environment I could control to some degree, or at least play a part in handling anything that needed to be done during the process, because it can be a long process. And sometimes the husbands or the partners who are assisting are there like, what do I do? Because the midwife and the assistant have it, they got it down. They're on it. Like, they're calm, they're collected, they're cool, and they know what they're seeing, and they know what they're working through. They have goals in mind. They're working with mama, and so we see all that happening, and we're sort of like the rover on the borderline there, kind of dancing around, seeing, oh, can I get this? Can I get that? Can I get this? And sometimes I get in the way. Sometimes I don't. I can't be hard on myself for doing so. But to answer your question, leading up to the second birth, you made it very comfortable, but there were fears, because again, we lived out in the country too, so we were away from a hospital. And if that did happen, that we needed to go there, it would have been a long trip. We would have made it, but it would have been a longer trip. So that was a bit uncomfortable, but honestly, there was probably, we were probably about 80% in faith and trust, and about, 20% in, what if, I hope this doesn't go down. Like, we got to be careful with this. And luckily it was an amazing, smooth, easy birth, as easy as it can get, really, from I guess from a time standpoint, like how long it took, and just like mama worked real hard, and she's an incredible warrior, and she got our daughter into the world. But yeah, I can't say that there wasn't some concern or fear leading up to it. What I will say to finish this off, though, is that I have experienced both. We ended up in the hospital the first birth, and that was way more overwhelming. The obtrusive, like, in our face, you got to do this now, you got to move in this direction now, very pushy, very intense in the hospital, as compared to the more natural, comfortable state that the home birth or the birthing center existed in. So it was like the environment was much, much different, super hectic at the hospital in contrast. So 100 times out of 100, I would choose to do it at home based on what our experience was. Absolutely.
Great. And going back to before the first birth, when you talked about, like, getting into resources and educating yourself, were there any resources that were particularly helpful, whether it was books or documentaries or just talking to the midwives or stories, or what do you feel like was the most helpful in coming to feel safer?
Definitely the most helpful was communicating with others who, particularly the midwives who had gone through it. And I could throw any questions I wanted to at them. I think, particularly for me, but I know that for some husbands, I don't want to generalize, but for some men, it can be a little uncomfortable to ask questions because we want to be sort of in control. We want to act like we got it together. But really, guys, like, ask as many questions as you can, even if they sound silly, even if they feel uncomfortable. The ones that feel uncomfortable are the best ones to ask. And that's how I got the best information, was communicating with the midwives. And of course, again, bouncing stuff off of Noelle when we're at home and we're kind of leading up to the pregnancy, and she's read some stuff about it. I've read some stuff about it, and we're kind of comparing notes, but then she can answer my questions too. So to answer your question, ask questions. Like, that's definitely the way to do it. Use the midwife appointments to your advantage in terms of, even writing down your fears when they come up, when you're not in a meeting, when you're at home at night and your wife's gone to bed or whatever, and you're thinking about it, you're imagining what's going to take place. Fears come up. Write those out, and those can translate into questions for the midwife, just to assuage your fears. That's a huge, huge, huge thing with communication.
Great advice. Yeah. Because sometimes you get in there and, do you have any questions? And you're like, probably, but I can't remember.
Yeah. Or you just feel, uncomfortable. It's like, for me particularly, it was like, okay, this is her thing. Mm-hmm. And that's not true, because when you get into it, it's your thing. It's both of your things, it's you as a couple thing, and you're a team. It's your team, right? And you got to be a part of that from the very beginning. And there was a part of me that was like, because it's not in the hospital, maybe it's like, I don't play as big of a part, which was funny because it's just the opposite. You know what I'm saying? Like, you hand everything over at the hospital. Here, you're like a part of it. And that's what's so exciting about it too, is you get to be a part of it, but be a part of it, right? You get to be a part of it. So be a part of it from the beginning, and, own your place in it, and ask the questions you need to ask to inform yourself to do the best job when the time comes,
Yeah, speaking of being a part of it, did you ever feel like too much pressure was put on you? Like you said, at the hospital, maybe it's kind of relieved from you. Did you ever feel like there was too much was asked of you?
No, I don't think so. We just had competent people there all the time, Mm-hmm. Obviously the one with Sophia was so fast that, like, her and Morgan were both there very quickly, and we could all participate. The four of us were a team, and then we had little Lyra, so she became the fifth part of the team, like, that was so cool. And I think but the first birth, it was very long. We were in there overnight. Like, there were some times where there were 40 minutes, hour and 10, where there wasn't anyone in the room. It was just my wife and I, her laboring. So that was a little bit uncomfortable. Okay, what do we do now? So I did feel a bit of more pressure then. So it's really about the duration, and who knows, what will happen, how long it will be, how short it will be, what will take place during the birth, of course. But I didn't feel like there was too much pressure on me. I honestly, like, giving away pressure at the hospital felt like more pressure, because there was sort of like this, or giving away responsibility felt like more pressure. Okay. Cause it's like, I want to kind of be in control. I want to kind of know that I have a job because I want to help with this, you know. And I was in that mentality. So ending up at the hospital, you're like, but I want to help, you know, and you just aren't there to do that. You know, you're not supposed to, you know, and there's, you know, the whole dynamic is different. So that felt like more pressure, actually taking that responsibility off. So the home birth was exciting because I got to be a part of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of people I know, they talk about the hospital, like, especially for partners, needing to play like an advocacy role. Did you ever feel like when you were in the hospital that was a role for you? And also at any of the out of hospital births, did you feel like you had to step in as an advocate for your family, or?
My wife is very outspoken, luckily. So she speaks her heart, and I love that about her. So she was able to speak up a lot. She didn't really ever pull on my collar and like tell him this, you know, ramming this home or whatever. There was a point where we got to the hospital in the first birth where she got an epidural and passed out because she'd been up for so many hours. So at that point, you know, luckily we had one of the midwives had come with us to the hospital, which was really cool. So I got to really talk to her about it. She ended up being more of an advocate, was the midwife that was there. But with the home births and even at the birthing center, everything went, even though everything the first time didn't go to plan, it went smoothly, right? Like people were there when we needed people to be there, and they were very intuitive, putting things together. You and Morgan were absolutely incredibly intuitive, like with what Noelle needed. And so there wasn't a point during those out of hospital births, no, that I ever thought I need to like really let them know that this is needed, that kind of idea. Yeah. So, but, and I think that's one thing you gain with the out of hospital birth is the intuition of the practitioners is on point. You know, it's not this sort of robotic, mechanized, overeducated, you know, coming from this like insane medical school place where you're like, you don't see beyond the education. You see the person when you're with a midwife. They're there for the person. They're there with the intuition. They're there feeling out the moment. Doctors are kind of in and out, and you know, doing a great job. But there's many of them coming in and out and stuff like that. So it's less of a personalized, more intuitive scenario at the hospital for sure.
Well, I think that brings us to prenatal care, because I think that's probably the biggest factor is by the time the baby's ready, we know the family so well, versus a practitioner that, you know, if you're lucky, you got to spend prenatal care with them. But a lot of times it's just whoever's on call at the time,
Right.
you know, so they don't really know you intuitively.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. What was your experience like with prenatal care? And did it differ from birth center to home birth? And
Yeah, definitely. You know, I would say, you know, obviously there's a difference where you're going to the birth center to get prenatal care, whereas you would come to us and we're in the comfort of our own home. We kind of lounge about, wear whatever we wanted, talk about whatever we wanted, but also get down to business and solve issues, talk about things, answer questions, whatever it may be. So the environment, well, obviously was different, but and you know that I would think for a partner that is sort of a factor when you're sort of in like an examination room and you're kind of off in the little couch they got there and you're not really a part of the conversation necessarily. Whereas when you're at home, you're there, you're with it, you're a part of it, you're dynamically involved. And the prenatal care was, you know, I mean, it was excellent. It was absolutely excellent. Because again, that factor was there where we, you know, we had any fear or question that we had could be answered for sure in those sessions. So apart from me being able to feel more comfortable and fearless going into it, I know Noelle felt insanely comfortable, like just completely 100% taken care of leading up to it, because you guys knew her so well and knew what she was expecting and knew what she was planning for and knew what she would need in the moment, because you know her, like you said.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'd love to talk about money, because that could be
Sure.
a big thing for people. It can feel
Sure.
like a lot of money, especially if you're paying out of pocket. There are a lot of insurances that cover it, either fully or partially. Do you want to talk a bit about that, and if insurance did cover it for you, or if that was ever a factor in you deciding to or to not do this? Because a lot of
Yeah.
times it's covered in the hospital.
Totally. It would have been covered in the hospital. You're trading so much when you are allowing just insurance to take care of it. You know, one thing is that, you know, when we pay for something out of pocket, or when we intentionally put that energy into it, there's an exchange that happens where you're like, okay, now it's time to receive after I've given. So that receiving process of bringing that little one into the world, you become much more engaged in it because you've invested in it, if that makes sense. And then, you know, with a hospital, it's like, okay, it's almost like that act of giving it all away and saying, okay, just do what you guys need to do what you were taught to do, and bring this baby into the world, you know. And that's those two experiences are very, very different, obviously, where it's like, I want to be engaged, or I want to just see my baby in my hands at the end of this whole thing, and I won't know what takes place, you know. And for us, it was like money was, by far, it was an easy investment, an easy yes to make, you know, to say, because it was like, for that reason, the type of care that you get, and allowing a sense of comfort to come from that, I think is important. You know, money stuff can kind of get in the way of us feeling and experiencing something. So if we're concerned, like, you know, if we put a certain amount of money into something, it's almost like we have this expectation of this better be awesome, or else I'm going to feel like I was slighted. This isn't the kind of situation to put that kind of intention on, because this is a child being born into the world. It's not about you. You know what I'm saying? Like, this is your son or daughter coming into the world. So like, make room for them, right? And make room for them in your heart. And the way to do that is to pay for it, is to invest in it. You know, we could have gotten reimbursed. I think we had a reimbursement offer from our hospital. And we found out about that. I found out about that after we had paid for the birth, which was fine. So I wasn't even expecting it. But that brings me back to my original point, which is, you know, you pay for what you get, right? And you if you're investing something in it, you're going to you're investing a part of yourself into it. And so that sort of engages you in the process more. And I think that's of the utmost importance as a partner, if you're going to do a home birth, is, again, to be engaged in it. So
great. What about the mess? I know that sometimes is a question that dads are like, wait, who's going to clean up? She just had a baby. She's not cleaning up. And especially if they've had a birth in the hospital, a lot of times they feel like it was a very messy experience. And like, what about the carpet? Was that even a thing for you? And what was your experience with like the mess?
Yeah, the mess, it was something I thought about a little bit. I guess we had a lot of tile and stuff, so it wasn't necessarily a concern for me. There was a question of whether she would give birth on the couch or not. And that was sort of, you know, if that had happened, yeah, I was like, okay, well, whatever that may look like afterward, like, I have a feeling that Sophia and Morgan will help us take care of it, or help me take care of it, right? And you guys definitely did. It was easy because it happened in the bathroom, and it was just perfect. There was just tile, and it was clean, and we were good. We cleaned it all up, and we were good. But honestly, like, you're thinking about moments, you know, that are some of the most important that you'll ever experience in your entire life. And a mess with some blood on the floor in exchange for a new baby in your hands, I mean, come on, you know. Let's really think about this here. Like, you know, it's so, and then, you know, I don't even remember the mess being cleaned up, but it was just gone. And I'm sure I helped. Do you know what I mean? It was like, you're just in this whirlwind of amazement and magic. And it's an incredible moment. So the mess is literally the last thing on your mind at that point.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we talked a little bit about your prenatal experience. Is there anything from the labor or the birth or postpartum that you want to share?
Let's see. The birth itself, the moment of birth, was wild. You know, again, it was just this moment that I'll never forget, and it was just filled with 100 different emotions all at once. Just an explosion of excitement and oh my God, it was transformational. But I think I think that because you and Morgan had probably seen that and been through that moment with parents before so often, that you really catered to like our level of conscious awareness, if you will, after during that time, where it was kind of like I was in sort of a daze, like la happy, like elated daze, and you're like, hey, help me with this, you know, let's roll this up, and you're very kind with it, like just like leading us into this place, and you guys are just like clinical and there and heartfelt and present and like on it. And we were just like, oh my God, we love our daughter so much, just melting with her. And when you needed me for whatever reason, you were very nice about sort of snapping me out of it. I remember that really well, because that was really sweet, because again, it's a control thing where it's like, if I'm going to be in that kind of transcendental state with people in my home and my baby just being born and a home birth happening and my wife possibly bleeding and all this stuff going on, it's like to give away that control in that way felt very comfortable. We felt like we were in amazing hands. It was really catered to our experience, I'll say, what we were experiencing in each moment. You guys really met us where we were and held space for that. So that was awesome. I will definitely say that is one of the highlights for sure. Well, and then postpartum too was excellent. You had some nice intervals of visits where some questions had come up, and you saw us a few times, I think, right in the beginning, and then one a couple weeks out, and like a month out. And it was just really nice how it kind of staggered out. And that I thought that was wonderful, because like new baby, toddler, we were actually moving at the time too. So it's just this crazy time in our lives. COVID, obviously. And so I was like, when is Sophia coming back? I got some questions, and she's like, oh, tomorrow. Oh, excellent. She's coming back tomorrow. Okay, that makes sense. And I was like, okay, it's just about time. Perfect. And so that was very comforting. And I'd say that like leading up throughout the moment and the experience of the birth and afterward, everything was spaced perfectly to where, there was these nice jumps in between where we could feel comfortable landing and asking questions and then going about our business and preparing and then coming back together. It was beautiful. Really, really beautiful.
Great. I'm even remembering too, Noelle reaching out after a visit with a question she had forgotten to ask me, and it ended up stemming like me coming over at I think it was 9 or 10 at night, just to check in and reassure her. And
so cool.
That's just another bonus. It's like your person's just a phone call away. You don't have to call and leave a message and get engaged, and
Thank you for saying that. That was excellent. And obviously Noelle handled all of that. So it was like, from my perspective, it's like, oh, it's taken care of.
Mm-hmm.
But I know from her perspective, it was like, so comforting knowing she could reach out to you at any time, and even you would come over if she really needed you, and awesome. And the person having the baby, the mama having the baby, that's them, their comfort level, their mindset, their sense of feeling safe and secure is of the utmost. I think that's the top priority here. So if I can feel more comfortable with that, all of that going on with her, then I'm set. Like it's like sort of me managing her environment and mindset and helping her through stuff. And if she's good, I'm good, basically.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Is there anything, looking back in hindsight, that if there was another one, or if you could do it again, that you would do differently?
Good question. The second birth, no. I think it went exactly how it needed to go. Obviously, there was so much going on during, prior to, with COVID and all that I think if that wasn't going on, there would have been a lot more minor concerns going into it, just because you got a baby coming and anything can happen. But we were a little bit distracted. So, I think that played into the ease of the birth a lot, was just not allowing a lot of fear to stack up, and knowing we were at a great safe place to be able to do this. And the fear of going to the hospital, that came up a few times because of COVID and stuff, and how awful that would have been. But we really talked a lot through it. I'm really grateful for that. And, Noelle and I were really communicated a lot about it and helped each other through those fears, because they're there for sure. But, really asked each other, continue to ask the team what we want. What do we want? What do we want? What do we want? And focusing on that solely, and sort of edging out all the different other things that could creep in. But to do anything differently, the first time around, I would have had a lot less expectations around how it would go. And because when you have those expectations dashed in the moment during the birth, it's like a slight to you almost, or a slight to your team. You're like, oh, it's another backslide or something. No, it's like, this is the normal dance of the birth. It could go all kinds of directions, and you can't really have a lot of expectations on when it's going to happen, how quickly it's going to be done, whatever, you're thinking you need expectations around. You shouldn't have them, because other than happy, safe, reasonably quick, easy, broad ideas of how it can go down. I remember wanting my son to be born the day before he was born. He was born 6 minutes into the next day. And I was like, oh, darn, I really liked the date on the day before. And it's like, what? That's such a stupid expectation. But it's like, she had been laboring for 36 hours. So it's like, we're about done with this. So,
yeah.
But yeah, he was literally born at 12:06, like 6 minutes out. It's so funny. And he
Babies
just
like to prove us wrong.
totally. And I felt that throughout, was like, this is him saying, Dad, stop making expectations, because I'm just going to dash him. And that's all I'm going to do when I get here. So like, stop trying to control everything. All right. You're done controlling stuff. You're a dad now. You got to let it happen, you know? So I learned that the hard way the first time around, but, and I wouldn't necessarily say I would do that differently either. It was a good life lesson, you know, but yeah, I would say if anyone is falling victim to their fear, absolutely talk about it. If I were in that space where I was letting fear happen to me and not talking about it, then that would definitely be something I would have regretted. But I'm really glad that I talked about it and had people to talk to about it.
That's great advice. Just to close it out, because I was going to ask you if there was a partner listening to this who was on the fence, is there anything else advice-wise that you'd want to say to them?
Yeah, I would, if you're on the fence, I would have a heart-to-heart with your partner, the one with the mama, and really weigh whether you want a ton of intervention or if you want people to hold space. So it's holding space is what takes place at home births or at a birthing center, which is you guys being able to do your thing and communicate and be together and make decisions on your own without a ton of pressure, while two amazing practitioners who are fully trained, know exactly what to do at all times, are there sort of on the sidelines, just, you know, allowing you to have that connection with your partner. The hospital is the opposite. It's almost as though they separate you, but you know, each has their merit. Okay. The hospital, you know, if there's a ton of bleeding or something goes wrong, you're in a hospital. It's excellent. Great place to be for that. We're not really planning on that kind of thing to go down, though, at the home birth. The home birth, because of that nurturing, comfortable, more, you know, it's a safer space. You know, it's a space that's held for you, rather than a space that's there that anyone could step into and give birth into, that may or may not be very chaotic during. This is a space that you can kind of, in a way, control more, and there's just more freedom with how that feels. So if you want more freedom in that story of how your son or daughter came into the world, then this is the home birth is absolutely the way to go. If you want to just give that away because you're uncomfortable with that level of responsibility, or you just want to get it, you know, be done, or be in a place where you're safe because you're not dealing with your fear or whatever, the hospital is probably the way to go. The home birth is for a little bit more of a free, responsible, but also a free experience where you can kind of make it what you want it to be.
Great. I love that. Well, thank you for meeting with me and being my little interviewee.
My pleasure. I haven't really talked about it in depth since she was born almost 6 months ago. So it was quite a moment. The birth itself was absolutely breathtaking. I mean, I get chills thinking about it. And I felt like we were able, I think that's what it really comes down to. I feel like we were able to fully experience it without any kind of intervention from anyone outside of us. It was just me, my wife, and her. And we were able to savor the moment without someone stepping in or putting pressure on us to do anything, right? It's absolutely beautiful. So if you feel like you want that, the home birth is definitely the way to go.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Well, thank you again. And
of course, my pleasure.
Our care is still not done, so I'll be seeing you around. Right. Because around 6 months is when I come back again. So
yeah.
All right.
But yeah, Sophia is on it. She knows what she's doing. She's loving and helpful and kind and courageous and punctual. And
I hear that a lot. Something I pride myself on.
And you're very organized. And I really appreciated that about you, because again, we're not meeting in some kind of, you know, checkup room or some examination room. We're at home, and you bring the examination room to us, and have everything on file and keep everything on file and know what we said a couple meetings ago. And it's just beautiful. That was really, really nice to feel so held and kept by that organization. That was really, really cool. So thank you so much, Sophia. If you guys have any question about it, Sophia's the way to go.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm more than happy with our experience. It was unbelievable.
Great. All right. Take care.
Hey, good to see you. Thanks, Sophia.